All right, welcome everyone to the November 14th regular meeting of the MCS Board of Directors, 5:30 p.m. We do have a quorum. Avalia will be late today and we will be absent 2 members for our meeting today, but we do have a quorum. Give me 1 second here. I do not have any pre-submitted public comments for today's meeting, but I do have changes to the agenda. We have some last minute things we added in that I want to see as long as we can get approval for it. One was a calendar approval, which is just formal adoption of our calendar for the year. And the other one was an approval for a survey for the playground that's going to be under fundraising under McKenna's playground action item under committee reports. So if I could get a second to those changes to the agenda. Thank you, Marie. All those in favor? Any opposed, voice your opposition? Thank you. That brings us to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. Because this, and someone texted me and asked what the consent agenda was. And so just to clarify, that's our financial reconciliation from either our credit cards or our checking accounts that the board approves. And due to some of the sensitive nature of the information on there, we won't post that to the screen, but this is a time for any board members to ask any questions that they may have going forward about anything they saw reviewing that consent agenda. And Thad, if you feel otherwise or have any past history on that, please let me know.
No, I think that's reasonable description.
Okay, unless there's any questions, I'll move to item number 5, which is the treasurer's report.
Because sorry, maybe I missed it. Do we have a consented agenda items to approve or no?
We have, yes, we do. Sorry, we have, let me go back. As it's been sent out from Avalia for June through October, we have, it's a profit and loss statement basically that's been sent out. Did everyone get that on the board?
Yeah.
Okay, so the profit and loss statement goes through what you'd usually see in the form of our, it's a different format than we're used to, but it also just, it lines everything out with our expenses for staff, food programs, everything else that we would normally see, whether it was a checking account expense or a credit card expense. It's laid out in that format. And I'm happy to table that if we want until the next meeting, if people need more time to review it. You know, it is a different format, and I'm sure that's liable to change in the future as well, as our business manager has their own format they may want to use. So I think that's one of those things that just as a board, we should be prepared for.
I looked through it, Dan, and didn't see anything that caught my eye that I have questions on, but you know, discussing it when Avalia's here might make sense. Did we decide to move it?
Okay. Yeah, and I can table that item number until she's able to launch. She's driving right now, so she'll be about 30 minutes late. So I'm happy to move item number 5, the treasurer's report, lower down on the agenda. And with that, unless we feel, do we need a note to vote to do that, or are we okay just moving that?
I think it'd be best to have a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we move item number 5, the treasurer's report, which includes input. So items number 4 and 5, consent agenda and treasurer's report, down to item number 11, which would be the grant update. So just post the grant update.
I'll second.
Second. Thank you, Thad. All those in favor? Any opposed, voice your opposition, please. Thank you. Motion passes. That'll bring us to the MTA report, number 6. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. So I have a couple of reports from different teachers. 4th and 5th grade report that the school year is going wonderfully. The students are separated by grade level for math, and it seems to be working really well. During reading and social studies, they're learning about government and diving into the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Students are learning all about amendments and how they affect our country. In science, students are coding, which will be required standard for students K-12 by the end of 2025. And students are using different materials such as Makey Makey and Ozobots from the Gorge STEM Hub as well. Melina, who is our middle school math teacher, is, let's just say, chomping at the bit, as you know, to get into the building. And so she's wondering when that might happen, really hoping that it's going to happen sooner than later, not near the holidays. So she's just curious about that. I'm not sure if there's a report on that or not. Kate Nichols has reported that she loves we have a curriculum leader to help make the process better and more efficient. And I think everybody's on board with that. Really happy that we have a curriculum leader right now. And Sarah Grace is doing an amazing job. SEL, Lisa Stevenson reports that she's started small groups and they're going really well. And that's been very successful. Another thing that staff has been wondering about is the timeline on some of the safety things that have been in the works as far as like when are the doors going to come in and that type of thing. So there's been some questions and curiosity on that also.
Our reading specialist and her team have been busy polling students for progress monitoring and getting those reports sent out to teachers to let us know how our kiddos are doing with their reading. And 2nd and 3rd grade, we've started a Native American, Pacific Northwest Native American Studies, emphasis on the culture, and then which we will then transfer later to learning about our own cultures and sharing that with our classes. The MTA has met with the admin, and we were able to present questions, concerns, and clarifications on many topics. And then the MTA will meet tomorrow to go over some of those things with MTA members. Any questions or?
Just kind of a response to the middle school move. Some of those things that Emery will cover more of it later, but a lot of it has to do with one thing has to get done before another thing can get done. So you've probably all seen the ramp that's being worked on, and that can't be finished until the plumbing is finished. And so it's all dependent, and that plumbing will be worked on during Thanksgiving break. So,
okay.
So a short note about that. We'll cover it more later on. Sorry, Maria, I'm not trying to step on your face.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to answer the question about the doors just because you're here, and I don't know how long this meeting will go on. But I did meet with the nutrition facilities operations and logistics manager and yesterday with Matt Henry, and 2 of the 3 doors are ready to be installed. There's a 3rd one that's still because it's a custom door, there's delays due to supply chain issues. However, I was briefed that by the end of this month, the doors would be going in. So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions based on the MTA report?
I just asked the MTA reps how it's going with enrollment. There's been some concern in the last 2 meetings we've had just about unevenness in the numbers and also just pressing up against our capacity in certain classes. And I'm wondering how that's all going. If it's settled down and seems like it's at a good level, or if there's still stuff to consider there.
Are you referring to like when we switch and separate out from math? Like there's a lot of like kids at certain grade levels that have more math kids than the others, or?
I might be misremembering this, but my recollection is that there was some concern about capping the class sizes, and you guys were asking about, are we going to cap these classes and when, and that was coming from maybe some unevenness, like, and I don't know which class it is, but like we have a lot more second graders than we do third graders.
Right.
And so when, we're doing things by ability, all of a sudden, all of the math group is really large for second grade, but much smaller for third grade. How is that going?
I think that's still the case. And unfortunately for third grade, I lost another student. They moved back to California. So that shrunk our numbers down once again. And I know second grade is still at the higher end. Fourth grade, I think, is still at the higher end than fifth grade. So that's still something I think that teachers are hopeful that we'll keep an eye on and watch.
Okay.
Thank you for that information.
Thanks. Yeah. And I just encourage you to let Matt, Henry, and Jen know if it's becoming an issue, and we, and then they can let us know.
I think if we get new enrollees that, are in second and fourth, that's something that we need to take a look at and just be cognizant of it. So I appreciate you asking, Julia. Thank you.
It seems like maybe that's one of those things that as we move forward and develop more for the next year, we look and see, okay, where are our learning points with multi-age for this year? How do we make it better? And what do we bring in? And maybe there's some education in classes we can take on different approaches to how to deal with that, or there's some organizational things we can look at as we move forward. So obviously not everyone's going to be at the same level, so it's hard to predict how to handle that, but I'm sure someone else has handled it before, so there must be a solution out there.
Yep.
One more question, just about how you collect your report. Like we heard from Ms. Hogue, but are the other teachers in the middle school, for example, given an opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe they just don't have anything new to report at the moment.
Yes, I think that is it. I shoot out an email every month just saying, what would you like us to report to the board? And sometimes people get right back to me, and other times it's just a busier time. So yes, that's who we heard from. So that's who we reported from.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much. That brings us to item number 7, which is our executive director report.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks to everyone here. Looking at my report, I always put up there collaboratively and effectively working together as a team, no I in team, and getting to know you all. That is so critical to truly, genuinely keep working together. I want to thank all you board members and the ones that aren't here yet. It's truly a volunteer position, and your service to the community school is really never ceases to amaze me in any district I've been in. So thank you, board members, from my position. And, I was looking at community. That word is the ladies were talking, and I'm blown away at all the things that people are involved in, all the different events. And, we have the turkey trot coming up on Thanksgiving. We have this Christmas bazaar. We have just, the assemblies. It's truly a community. It's really a community from inward and outward. And I think it has such a wonderful future because of those components. And I think it's so critical to just keep working together. I sent out a newsletter last week with everyone else, and their great information, encouraging parental support in all aspects of the school system. It's so helpful, to be able to reach out to parents as a teacher or as an administrator and know that they are basically, I'd say, objectively looking at how to help us to help their child succeed. because we have had behavior challenges this year. I'm probably spending on any given day 30% of my time on behavior, discipline, those type of things. So the parent component is so helpful, and I can't encourage that enough as I interact with different parents. I'll be calling one after the meeting tonight. The Mosier Twin Tunnels is where that's happening. I was frankly amazed it's happening on Thanksgiving. I don't know why. I was just starting to be able to run off the extra food. On a little bit of a realistic, but I'd say more of a motivational piece of data. The enrollment was 151, 152 K8 as of yesterday. Literally 4 families and students moved away last week. So with the pre-K, it's 161. And I'm also going to have the 17th, this Friday, the first, I've done this before in other school systems, with the small town of Mosier in the community. I hope that some folks will be able to come and join me for coffee in the library and just get to know one another. I'm interested in ideas that community folks might have. I think word of mouth, frankly, is probably the most powerful way to encourage people to consider a school. So I look forward to meeting some of the folks that have students in our school and brainstorming with them on how we can keep trying to move forward to increase our enrollment. Signage, I think, could be one of the things I want to look into. I know a couple of the schools in the Dalles have pretty significantly large signs, either in their main entrance, on a fence. So I'm going to try to find some funds to purchase some of that type of signage. I used it in another school. It was all over inside the school and outside of the school. We continue to send out alerts, encouraging enrollment, or actually encouraging where we might have some spaces. But as you said earlier, Dan and others, it is a little bit, I mean, how can you predict a family and what level of children they have? I mean, it's very difficult. I wish we could draw eventually, 30, 35 kids in the middle school level, because that's where we need them. And I think down the road, hiring people, I know all the elementary teachers do wonders with their ability to literally present music. And I think to enhance that interest for so many kids would be nice to have someone who could have music. I know many kids go away, as you guys know, for sports and things like that, but there are things we can continue to look at to do to try to bring kids into the school system and parents. And with that, I would drop down, if you would, in my report, because I just wanted to mention a couple things. It's under E. Down there it says literally to date, as to data as to what has happened with different children and families.
Matt, would you like me to pull your report up and share it on my screen?
If you can, Dan.
I can do that. Yeah. Give me 1 second and I'll do that. Yeah. I'm sorry I didn't do it earlier.
No problem. And I apologize. I think the report, whenever somehow it's dark, really dark in certain areas. So I'll work on that.
Okay. Item E.
Yes. And ignore E. That was left on there by mistake. I'll share that with you guys at a different date with FAD. So basically, we've had approximately 12 kids that have transferred. And that is folks that I understand were here last year, but transferred after last year. We've had 7 move out of state at least. We have 4, I think a little bit more, or 5, 6 homeschooling. And there's at least, I believe, instead of 4 there, I think there was actually closer to 6 that are unknown. Waiting list, though, at the bottom, you see that 24-25 pre-K has 10 students waiting. We have 25-26 already in pre-K. There's a list there of 7. Kindergarten 24-25, we have 13 on the waiting list. First grade 3 for the same year. Second grade 2. Third grade 1 for 24-25. Fifth has 1 at this point. Sixth grade has 3, and 8th grade has 1. So you can, yeah.
These are the current wait lists we have for each one of these classes.
Correct. Yep.
For next year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And even on pre-K out to 25-26. So you basically have 17 kids waiting for that program, which is such a critical program. But I know it's difficult to fund it.
Is there a reason these kids aren't already in the grade that's 1 less than they're on the waiting? Like for instance, we have 1 on the 8th grade wait list for next year. Is there a reason why they're not with us now in 7th grade?
The reason I wouldn't know, Thad, good question. I'll check with Daphne. I don't know if it's based on where they're at now, but yeah, believe me, I think if they were ready to come now, we'd have them.
Okay.
So just so I understand this correctly, so for 6 for 24-25, is the class full and we have 3 that are waiting to get in, or is it just 3 that have a pending application?
Well, they're basically, yes, they're pending, I guess you'd say. They're waiting.
Okay.
They are.
So it's not that the class is the class full and they can't get in unless there's an openings, or I just try to understand how it's read.
I'll get more clarification. These were just the numbers that I asked Daphne to put together connected to her waiting list. So I'll clarify tomorrow. If any of these folks literally could join now, then we will encourage that. I have in my notes on my hard copy here that I'm going to reach out. I have reached out to a couple and left messages. I'm going to reach out to anyone that I feel, besides the folks that have literally moved out of state, by phone and try to contact and communicate with them and just touch bases, just see if they, if their status now is, are they reconsidering coming back to Mosier, that type of thing. So I am going to be doing that before the week is out.
Yeah, it would be good to know. So like, for example, if kindergarten had 13 enrolled for next year or 13 on the wait list to enroll, because that's an idea that we could then as a board say, okay, well, maybe we should hire another teacher that's a floater that follows that grade. If we know we're going to have 13 students over what we need or what we can, actually have capacity for, then we may have to figure, we have options there to do something else.
No, I get it. Good point, Dan. Of course, it could be their age, the age for 25-26, you have 7 apparently, so maybe they're not of age yet, but yeah, we could that's a good way to think about it. So I just wanted to share that with you, though it's down a little bit. I think, like I said, to start, the more we work together to achieve our objectives, the better outcomes. But that is some of the data we're looking at. Flipping over here. I had a great visit by phone with Lucille Begay today, and I know she met with Maria, and I believe Avilia and Julia. She was telling me she had a wonderful meeting with them. And I'm just going to sum it up by saying we talked about all the things that she presented, you know, in right down to reading in classrooms, native or oral stories. I bet you she probably will do them orally, some of them, to the big assembly type idea. But what I really liked that Maria might know about is she'd love to, based on my lead, and I just said we do this together with the board, and that is establish a committee to meet and strategize for this year. So we're going to be setting up a time to do that. The 27th through the 30th of November, we're still hoping to be able to get her in after Thanksgiving. But we need to dialogue a little bit more about it for her schedule and other things. But she's very excited to come in, and we talked quite a while, and I won't go into the things we talked about, but we continue to strive below that. And if there's any questions, just yell. Behavioral trends, we're working on our behavior, we're working on our goals behavior wise. I'd like to thank Jennifer. She's been working on an electronic form, a discipline form that we will be able to, let's just say, more if there's an urgent desire to communicate with a parent, back to what I said in the newsletter, to close that loophole and get the communication going electronically. It's going to be, I think, a better approach. Doesn't mean phone calls won't be made, but I like to be able to get something in front of people. Our PD focus on November 28th is around some of the behavioral information we learned from a presenter earlier in the year, so the folks will be able to really work together on that date around that. And I don't know if you ever read that link, but I sent a link, I believe, to everyone. But behaviors are not just a Mosier challenge, it is a national issue right now. And when you talk to our teachers, they really know, because they were in the trenches. It appears to be sort of that gap that took place, resulting in, from what I'm hearing and reading, a lack of emotional development and a lack of academic development. So I predict it might go another year or so. I'm not really sure. On the 8th, PACE, our insurance supporter, has some excellent trainings. I've looked into this with the folks. The first one for everyone will be sexual abuse awareness training that they have. Then we have a classroom, I call it management, but classroom behavioral things that they have a training on. That'll be for the licensed folks. And then they even have an outdoor or playground or indoor type playground training. And we all know, since they're an insurance company, there's reasons they have these trainings. And I'm looking forward to hearing their expertise from where they're coming from. Crystal, Sarah Grace, and like Lisa said, they all continue to just try to work together on how we can look at our data together, improve our practices together, and improve our student outcomes. I am very pleased to announce under C that if Alyssa Bach, yeah, there she is. I see Alyssa. I'm very happy to say that Alyssa has joined us. Alyssa Bachman, she's one of our parents, and her first day was the 7th. And I just cannot say enough about what I heard about her from her references and what I'm already seeing from people interacting with her just after a couple of days. So she is very much welcome. Alyssa, do you want to say anything?
I don't have anything specific to say, just that I'm happy to be on board and looking forward to working with everyone and learning more about the school.
Thank you so much for being here.
Okay. And you might notice out to the outcome, I wrote on a report, major improvement to all systems. And I seriously mean that. With her presence, I think it's going to really bring that glue together for us. And I will just hold off on the facilities because I know Maria has put that together. I would mention only, as she probably will, or yeah, we're waiting for the we can't really proceed with that ADA ramp until it's, let's say, engineered precisely, is my understanding, and then everything else will sort of fall together. But that is a bit of a holdup down there. I think you mentioned that, Dan. I will also say I'll send it to you, board members, and the staff. I just haven't yet. But we had a long visit with PACE about 2 weeks ago. Dawn, myself, Jennifer, and their representatives, including their, I forget their position. But anyway, there's a bunch of recommendations after a 2.5, 3 hour tour. You guys have probably seen this before, around our building. And so we'll be communicating those and trying to transition into some of those, because some of them are really not that optional. We have to take care of them. And I'll send that out. I just haven't yet, but it's a list.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Any questions for Matt after his report? Seems like there's a lot there, and there's a lot for us to dive into with the PACE stuff in the future. I wanted to say one thing, Alyssa, as you, just probably a fairly sizable onboarding process to really get a grasp of all the stuff that encompasses your job. And if you feel that you need more help, or you need anything as far as context goes, between Thad and myself, and Jen, we have some historical context we can definitely help with. Please, get with Matt, but reach out if you need assistance in anything. We want you to succeed and thrive here. And so please, if you're having trouble with anything, reach out.
Thank you. I will.
So Dan, I think we have an action item we need to cover under the ED report.
It does. Yeah. So the action item is, let me go back up here, approval of the business manager hire. So
just in case anyone's not aware, like, it's been our standard practice that recommendations for hire be made to the board and the board approve them. So on that note, I'd like to move that we approve Matt's recommendation for hire of Alyssa for our business manager position.
I'll second that. All those in favor? Any opposed, please voice your opposition. Motion passes. Thank you and welcome, Alyssa.
Glad to have you on board, Alyssa. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have one thing. Tiffany's in our audience tonight, and I know she's here for the action item that's under fundraising at the very end, which is an approval of a survey. So board members, you received an email that has 3 options for survey prices. I'm sorry to move this, but I believe it's important so that Tiffany, if she's probably just holding for later on, but and maybe somebody can text her and reach out. But I don't want to make her wait all meeting long to get to something that she's just waiting to give input on for the playground. Does anyone have any? If you have her, go ahead, Marie.
Yeah, I saw that email and I reached out to Dawn. I think it would be great to see if a survey already exists before any motion.
Good point. Thank you.
Survey, sorry, Dan, but a survey in the sense of the current location of the playground?
Certainly, yeah. So it's the current location for the playground. For me, it encompasses more than just that. There's also the garden area over there, but it's a topographical survey that allows a designer to look at the space and say, okay, here's how much, here's the grade changes over this space, and here's what it's going to, if we're talking about putting some kind of structure in, well, if it's a completely flat space, that's one thing, but if it's not flat, then it creates more space there. So, I'll make a motion that we move that item up now since Tiffany's here, and allows her to speak to that, and then she doesn't have to wait all meeting long if she has other things to do tonight. So I make a motion that we move the discussion about the playground, and we've already had a little bit of the discussion about the playground survey up so that Tiffany can have a time to speak about it now, and then we can clear that off because McKenna's not here for the fundraising report later anyway. Can I get a second for that? Thank you, Marie. All those in favor? Any opposed? Voice or opposition?
Sorry, Matt, I'm gonna just hold my vote for a second. What are we approving?
Moving the agenda order to move the playground discussion up, just to get it,
Okay.
since Tiffany's waiting. I don't want to have her
Yeah,
wait
yeah,
for 3
no,
hours
that
or
part
2
I
hours.
understand. I just didn't know if we were making a
Yeah.
decision on, okay. Yes,
No.
I no opposition to moving it up.
Okay, thank you. So Tiffany, if you heard there, basically what Marie pointed out was that there may already be a survey that exists. So we're going to see if Dawn can find out that information. Go ahead. Here, I can't hear you. We can't hear you because you're muted, unfortunately.
Okay, how about now? Sorry, I was driving. I'm in my car. I pulled over. I'm listening. I'm going to pick up my son from a play date. So I just was listening and pulled over so I could speak.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have asked Dawn over a month ago for any site plans or anything, and she said she was going to look, and I haven't heard back from her, but I did mention it again at the community meeting we had last week, and she still didn't have anything. So I'm wondering if they don't exist. Definitely, yes, before spending money, we need to double check with her. That email also went to her today. I included her with all of you this morning. And so I feel like if she knew and if it existed, she would have spoke, but she might not have got it. She might have been too busy today to even get it. Yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Matt.
would just share, I did talk with Dawn about 2 hours ago, and she has looked and looked. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but we can't find anything currently.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Okay.
I can't imagine why we would have had to do something like that anytime recently.
The other thing for me in discussing those costs, and Julia, you can speak, but at any time you want, but they're all below the threshold that needs board approval. The only thing I would say is that it's based on some fundraising money. So I don't know the details of whether money raised through a fundraising effort for a playground needs to be approved by the board to be prior to being spent. So basically, I think that's something that, because it's below the threshold, Matt can approve, and we don't need to vote on it as a board. So then it would just fall under whatever the procurement rules are for the price points there. I saw that they're ranging from 2,000 to 3,500 or more, and there's 3 different options there. So part of that is the best price, but also part of it's the best fit. So Matt will let you follow up with that. Tiffany has worked with one of those people in the past.
Mm-hmm. I'd only add, I was not able to make the meeting that they had, Tiffany had a couple of weeks ago, but I'm assuming from their work, they've processed this pretty well and taken input as to the design and those type of things.
Yeah, we only had 3. Oh, sorry. We only had 3 people show up. I was kind of bummed, like community, so that's okay. I mean, we can try to hold another one after the break or something, just to see, like, last chance if you got comments or ideas. Because I was really like envisioning it to be community involved and people, would want to meet up and have input, but we had only 3 people show up. So McKenna and I were like, well, let's just start moving forward. But then really being out there and visualizing what I could see going on, there's just so much grade change from the front step to the north side of the property that's along Highway 30. We got to have a topo map if we're serious about doing this.
It's probably one of those things too, as the momentum develops, more people will get on board. It's
cool.
Everyone's fairly busy, but I think that as you see something happening, people will get more engaged. So
I'm simply curious, Tiffany, has a staff, any position, participated or given input?
Other than Dawn, Jen a little bit. I've spoke with her about it before the meeting. Just her and Dawn really are the only like staff members at the school that have had any input. Okay. I'd also like to do something, if it's possible, I'd like to hear what the kids think. I'd like to know what they would like to see and do out there. I think that'd be really great.
I think that's a good idea.
Marie, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, and I'm sorry I couldn't make the meeting. However, I think there's many of us in the community that do care, and as you gather information about, you know, what is available and how much things cost, I think that'll be really wonderful and probably will help design the playground in a way. Oftentimes the limitations of construction projects help inform the design and whatnot. And
oh yeah,
I I look forward to, you know, help in some way in the brainstorming process, and I'm sure other members of the community. And I hope you won't take this small turnout as discouraging.
I'm still excited.
Yeah. Thank you.
Julia, you had a comment as well.
I was just going to kind of piggyback on Matt's inquiry about including teachers, and just suggest too that TAs would be great, or, you know, folks that are working out on the playground with the kids may have some thoughts about what would be good and what would be hard to have out there. You know, what causes conflict, what really brings kids together in you know, cooperative ways. And I'm no playground expert, but that seems like a good resource. And I'll add my thanks for taking a role in this and leadership role. It's great.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to do it.
Thank you, Tiffany. Any other questions for Tiffany or comments related to the playground? Thank you. I think we've satisfied that part of the and kind of nullified the need for any action item from the board on that.
Oh, can I
go ahead? Yeah.
Just one thing. So basically we'll just double check, make sure we definitely don't have any such document anywhere. And then after that, I can get with Matt or Jen and move forward with hiring this out. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah,
okay.
and I would say include Alyssa, our business manager, just to make sure we're, you know, I think the amounts here are low enough that this won't be a problem, but we just need to make sure anytime we bid work out that we follow any applicable procurement rules since we're a public entity.
Oh yeah, and I can call those three back, or I don't know how many bids you guys would require, but I can you know, have them put it in writing.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'd add is echoing what Julia said. I think it's awesome what you're doing, Tiffany, but when we meet and such, I'd like to include, I'll try to recruit a licensed or two and a TA or two just to have some input.
Okay. And how can we go about getting input from the kids? Is that something like I'll talk with Jen about, and maybe they can do something in class, like
Let
teachers
us talk.
or...
You know, I don't know if the ladies are still here, but I could see how the teachers, you know, they would just be having to balance their time for their lessons that day. But I could see them potentially just laying out some basic components and just getting some feedback from the staff. I mean, the students. Because I guarantee you the kids they'd probably be quite enthused.
I hope so.
It might be a fun, almost like a design project for kids. You know, if you could design your own playground, what would you do? And have them take that on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Well, thank you, Tiffany, for your engagement here and the time you're putting into it. Really, we appreciate it. The community appreciates it, even if they didn't show up that much. That playground is heavily used, you know, during non-school hours. So I know there's lots of people who are there that appreciate it.
Oh, thank you guys.
Thank you. Okay, so that we've summed up our number 7, which is our executive director report, and part of the fundraising report. That brings us to item number 8, which is our ED search update. And there's an approval for job posting, a job description posting that I'll share up to the screen here, which is an action item. Give me 1 second. Julia, you sent it out earlier today, but I'm not seeing it for some reason. Did the board get the email that has the ED job posting?
Mm-hmm.
I just forwarded it to you again, Dan.
Thank you. I somehow got lost in translation there. I see. All right, thank you, Fad.
Yeah.
So we're working with Breakthrough Consulting, which all the board members are aware of, and we are basically, after an approval of this job posting, the job posting will go out this week. And so we're following a schedule that's set in place to try and have these decisions made in the spring, so we can have somebody shadow / on board. And it's a long process, but this is the step that we're at right now. Did anyone have any questions or concerns about this job posting?
Looks good to me. I read through it earlier.
Okay. Some of the things that we added later on were the ability to communicate in Spanish. Being bilingual is a preferred thing because of our always growing population that needs more than just English. And we've seen that be something that it's not necessarily an issue, but it's one of those things we want to try to accommodate. So if we can find a candidate that has that skill set, it would be wonderful. So this will all go through Rob at Breakthrough Consulting. If there aren't any other concerns, I'll make a motion that we approve the job announcement for the ED. Can I get a second? Thank you, Fad. All those in favor? Any opposed, please voice your opposition. All right, so the job posting is approved. And we'll get that out, Rob will get that out this week, which is exciting. That'll start us on our next, the next search, next process. All right, that brings me to the website maintenance and cleanup. We've had a few concerns from the community and just in general about the kind of clunkiness of our website. We did do an update. That remind me if it was last year or the year before, but we had an old website. We hired a company they had kind of cookie cutter websites that we could use, which we had paid for either last year or the year before. And it still isn't, I think, great to use. It's not easy. It's hard to find certain things. So Leah, who was a past board member, has volunteered to help work on the website, make it more user-friendly and approachable. And so that's just an update there that we're going to be looking to just make it more user-friendly, make things easier to find. We hear comments that, hey, I can't find the meeting minutes from X meeting or things like that. So it's not my forte, but I'm excited to have somebody have some energy and positivity to put into the website. Any questions or concerns about that?
No,
I think it's great. I will say that someone asked me for our a recent recording, and I couldn't find it on the website. But then when I emailed the person who handles our YouTube channel, I found a link to the YouTube channel, and they were all there, even the most recent ones. So it's going to take a minute, but we have everything. I just think it hasn't quite transferred over to the website the way it should.
Yeah, I think just having a permalink that's there that just links to the YouTube account instead of it being I think it's a lot of work to have to just update each one individually. But if you have a permanent link that's there that says, here's our agenda, here's our meeting minutes, here's our recordings, then you can just go right to that based on one link, and it doesn't have to keep being. It takes less energy from our staff to update that. So that's something that we can discuss as we move forward with that. But I think there's easier ways to do it. The next one brings us that shows up number 9, which is our website maintenance and cleanup. Welcome, Bavalia. Sorry you had to deal with traffic to get home. It brings us to number 10, which is our calendar approval, and then after that we'll bring up the treasurer's report and consent agenda. So Bavalia, just so you're caught up to speed, we moved your agenda item down until you got here so we could just have you present it rather than having me try to go clunkily through it or awkwardly through it or whatever. So so we'll get through item number 10, which is our calendar approval, and I'll post the calendar on the screen here. I'll share the calendar to the screen, and then we can get you in and on board there, and I'm happy to share your stuff as well so that you don't have to try and pull it up. All right, so here's our 2023 board calendar. We're here in November. This is based off of past calendars, kind of what is set out by OSBA. It shows us what we should be doing in this month. Future months. Is there anyone that has any input for this or comments about what they're seeing so far? We had 2 via email, one that asked for an adjustment to our alcohol policy for Made for Mosier because it's a school event and we have a no alcohol policy. So there's a approval of that, which will come to in the spring. And there was another adjustment which we'll do in December. But for now, here's what we have set out. And I can, Matt, if you need this, I'll email it to you if you don't have it already.
It'd be great.
So on I don't, in general, I don't have any, I've seen this before, and I think we've looked at one earlier revision maybe. But we do show in November, which is now, reviewing state assessment results. Are we pushing that to the December meeting? Have they even been released
Yeah,
yet?
I just noticed that.
They're not always out in time to review in November, because I know the release of state assessment results is somewhat staged, and we can't really review them in a board meeting until they've been released for public consumption, which is later than they're released for administrative consumption.
Okay. October, I believe. I certainly could do that next month. I know they were basically released in October.
Okay. So not that long ago. Yeah.
So Matt, we'll put those in the December agenda. We'll move that. We'll make those adjustments to the calendar. Thank you, Fab, for highlighting that.
But Dan, that's up to you. I'm just saying I will be sure next month to bring some data. If you guys want to keep that there in November, that's
the stuff like that on this calendar, in my opinion, should be viewed as a guide. The goal is to do that in November, but if it needs to be December, then that can be okay. So I don't know that we necessarily need to change the calendar if this is, that item's going to get pushed to December.
Right. Certainly. I'm gonna just make one more note real quick here because there's something else there. We're going to bring it up later on, but it's an action item in facilities to dissolve the facilities committee as a board-owned committee and have it be an ED committee, and that's something we need to put on the June part of our calendar is to reevaluate where that committee lies and how that's working. And that'll be in June. Okay. So I've made the notes of the changes. Taking those changes into account, do we feel comfortable accepting and adopting this calendar? Okay, I'll make a motion that we adopt this 2023 board calendar as presented here, with the adjustments to the December meeting. Will include the state assessment results, and then as we have other changes that come up, we'll make sure that the public is notified of those changes in the calendar. Can I get a second? Thank you, Thad. All those in favor? Any opposed, please voice your opposition. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, we'll go back up to item number 5, which is the treasurer's report. Evalia in that, and I'll bring your report up, but with our consent agenda, we didn't share it to the screen. We just went through it. But if there's anything else you want to add to that or discuss in that, I'm happy to allow time for that. But I'll pull up your report here in a second.
All righty. Good
Welcome.
afternoon, and sorry for running late.
Okay.
Yes, life. So Columbia Gorge ESD has been continue to fill in. We do have an on-site person once a week in Mosier Community School currently. We know that is there's limitations that come with that, but invoices and immediate needs such as payroll are being met in a deadline, within the deadline basis. Quarter reports have been all sent out or filed. We currently are waiting for the EFTPS, which is the IRS payment method, being able to pay payments online, even though that report has been mailed out. Patty did email me today that she's working with Oregon Revenue and Francis Online, which are pretty much just payroll liabilities, reporting and payments that need to be taken care of. And I will be meeting with Matt, Alyssa, and Patty tomorrow to be able to nail down more of the precise things that are in the urgent need, and also just making sure that Alyssa's onboarding continues to go smoothly. And I believe Matt spoke a little bit more on the new business manager already. So those are pretty much the report I have. I did send a profit and loss, which can be really hard to follow at first. So that is something that I will be working with Alyssa to be able to present next board meeting, and much more nice, friendly reader report to be able to start approving the expenses for the credit cards as well as others, because I know that's long overdue.
Thank you, Evalia. Do you feel like it would be, I guess this is a rhetorical question, but we should probably reach out to Kara Flath at the district and maybe try to set up just a greater meeting to introduce everyone, so that they realize that, you know, we have a new business manager, but also so that Alyssa knows when she's talking to somebody on the phone, or, you know, or emailing back and forth, who they are. So maybe we need to set up a time where between the CGESD, ourselves, and the district, that we kind of get together and start curating those relationships. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that is splendid, and it should happen. So I will definitely start working on that.
I think it's some of those things with all of our, you know, whether it's the student success or, you know, the various grants that we have or funding sources that we have, it's going to be important that we're on that. And there's quite a bit to come up to speed on. So it's not really a concern, mostly just there's such a large amount of things that she needs to be brought up to speed on that is there anything we can do to make it easier? I think that we should, as a board, do that.
Absolutely. And I'll also make sure that like SIA and S are like for Nancy and just different other contacts we can facilitate those meetings because they will definitely be very helpful when those reports are due or coming to be needed to be reported.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions for Avelia? Okay, thank you for presenting that. I'm excited about this step being done. Thank you, Matt, for your guidance on that. I know that it took a while for us to get the right person and the right fit, but I do, your experience and time and just being concerned about the need to fill that position. It's like, well, it was heard and warranted, and we're happy that we were able to do that and let's put her name in. So I'm happy that we'll be able to move forward there. If you can hear, can you guys hear crying in the background? Okay, there's some crying going on in my house. All right. All right, that brings us to the DOE grant and HVAC update. I don't have a grant update there other than to say that we have a whole bunch of background information and approvals that are going on. So there's various documents that are being approved or processes or contractor inputs that are being approved. What we do have is an action item, which is a draft contract, an update that basically says it would be, FAD reached out and said it would be important for us to protect ourselves to potentially pay our lawyers to come up with some kind of contract language that we can prepare and use with anybody we hire in the school. So it's something that, and we can check and see if PACE has something like this, but basically that would allow us, if a contractor is hired by us to do something from a grant or anything else, if they have subcontractors or anything else, we have some language that's in place that we can use for those contractors that protects us and reduces our liability. Something that I think is going to be needed with this DOE grant. And so if we don't have that through PACE, what will happen is we'll need to pay our lawyers to create something that will satisfy those needs. Again, I think it will be below the threshold of our board approval threshold, but it's something the board should be aware of. And I think it's something that's important that we have in place, so that we protect ourselves, but also so that we make sure that our contractors follow through with what they're going to do. Anyone have any input or discussion on that?
You want me to reach out to PACE on that, Dan?
Yeah, if you could. They may have something that's prepared for this, or they may, I don't know. If they do, that's great.
Okay.
I think that's reaching out to them in the first place, starts the process and covers us. And then lets us know whether we need to move on to the next step or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I put it as an action item, but again, I don't think it's something that the board needs to approve unless there's a board member that feels otherwise. I think it's just something that the ED would handle, or the facilities manager would handle in their course of action and course of business. Any further discussion on that? Okay. That'll bring us to kind of our largest content section of our agenda items tonight, which is policy review, a first reading with FAD. There's a ton of policies that were sent out. I didn't get the exact count, but many are revisions. Some are deleted, some are brand new. This is the first reading, so it basically is a space for, and FAD, you can take over anytime you want, or correct me if you want to take over, but the board as a whole, you're expected to know our policies, to read our policy book online, but also to see the ones that is being sent out, look through them, and if you have any concerns, let us know. There's some spaces in here where we can either adopt certain language or make some changes. It seemed to me that those policies were all ones that were in our initial need to do section rather than the
I can
option to do.
just take over from here and go.
Perfect.
Should I share my screen or do you want to share yours?
Whichever you prefer.
Let me see if I even need it. You guys see the screen? So I want to, this could be as long or as short as it needs to be. It's not my intention to make it too long, but I do think we should. I created an intro slide, which is on the screen now, and then a slide for each sort of policy. I think it's important for this to be out there for the public, to see exactly what policies we did a first reading on today. And what, at least a summary I've tried to include in these slides is sort of what the material elements of the recommendation were. When we say reading, it's never been my experience in 6 years that we actually physically read the policy in the meeting. We try to give space with separation about a month for there to be a first and second reading. If there's any comments or questions that anyone feels should be, require some additional research or clarification between now and next month's meeting, that's really the main goal of tonight's meeting, is to get that out there so that I can go chase those down, so we have something firm to approve. So typically about once a year, we get updates from OSBA. We subscribe to a service where they host our online policy manual, which I've got a link to here. And they make recommendations as to what policy should be in that manual, when the policy should be updated. And those recommendations are all, vetted through appropriate legal resources and everything. So we sort of get access to that through our subscription to this policy service through OSBA. Those updates that they give us typically contain recommendations that are at various levels. So tonight's presentation and first reading is just covering the last sort of slew of updates over the last few years that in the updates that OSBA flags as required. We won't be going over conditionally required or highly recommended or optional until we've gotten through first and second reading on these required. Just for historical reference, it's generally been the practice of Mosier schools since well before my time on the board that we've only ever looked at the required updates. I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't stray from that in the future, but obviously required is, the highest priority. Any questions so far? Please interrupt me as I go through. Policy AC, and a lot of these policies will have a policy, in this case over covering discrimination, and then an associated complaint procedure. From a technical perspective, the policy and the complaint procedure are separate policies, but they're paired. So whenever there's recommendations for changes to a policy and the associated complaint procedure, I've lumped those together. We do have a current policy on discrimination. So the recommended changes here are updates to our current policy that include updated verbiage to include gender identity as something is not allowed as a basis for discrimination, as well as some, somewhat significant new wording governing what charter schools can do to determine admission standards or what students are admitted, and to ensure that that's done equitably. The associated complaint policy has some new wording covering who can file a discrimination complaint, and my read of that that wording change just broadens the scope of who can file a discrimination complaint about something they feel happened at the school, rather than, it doesn't narrow the focus, it broadens it. It also has some updated wording to clarify the appeal process, which would kick in if, say, someone filed a complaint and didn't like the outcome and wanted to clarify, what their options are to appeal. And then, of course, usually when there's a change of the policy itself, like in this case, to include, gender identity or equitable determination of student admission, there's usually updates to the associated complaint policy to be in line with that. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about, again, we're not voting to approve any of this. We'll do that again next month. And, you know, we don't have to approve all, I think there's a dozen of these slides here. Even next month, we don't have to approve all of them in one fell swoop. If there's a couple that we feel need a little more time, we can do that. But tonight is definitely the night to get any questions or concerns, you know, out there. Not that you can't also do it a month from now, but any questions about this one? Yeah, I'm going to interpret a no verbal response as a no concerns. All right, the next policy is around local wellness, and this is actually a required policy for schools that participate in a free and reduced lunch program, which Mosier does. We do currently have a local wellness program. The recommendation here from OSBA is to actually delete our current local wellness policy and adopt a brand new one. I don't see anything in the new one that, you know, concerns me, but does anyone else have any concerns about the local wellness policy recommendation?
I didn't have a concern, but it did seem like there may be more work for the ED and for our, you know, for those managing food service, where it's, you know, a committee that's set up to, and some kind of just some more deliverables. I think just more, you know, there's more tracking. You know, I know we already do perform reporting and everything else, but it just seemed there was a bit more there.
Yeah, there is, although I'm not so sure that it's more than what we already do. I think most people are somewhat blissfully unaware of all the reporting and tracking that at present Dawn does around our food service, and that is, it has long been a requirement of our free and reduced lunch program. But I think to that note, let's just take it. If everyone's comfortable with it, let's take a note down for me to go over the recommended new policy adoption with both Dawn and Matt, and identify if there's any concerns, you know, so that we have that information for the second reading.
Thank you.
Thad?
Yeah.
Could we maybe also add, because I also read some sections where it says after school or even before school activities, so maybe including the Tiger's Den or some sort of other more focused activities that could happen within kids' activities and eating. Because I know that there's much more emphasis in saying of healthy food choices and so on.
Okay. I can definitely have a look at that. We have to be careful how far we stray from the wording of a policy that's, you know, recommendation that's given to us by OSBA, because if we stray too far, we kind of trigger the need to like do a bunch of our own legal review. But I can certainly I need to go back and read over that policy in a bit more detail and see if there's some ways we might be able to fit some things like that in. I also want to note that just because something isn't spelled out in a policy doesn't mean we can't do it. It's just not policies sort of are a bit more rigid in terms of what, you know, how they constrain us and dictate what we do. Does that make sense?
I think the intent there too on that was just that we're promoting nutrition, whether it be something that's in school or anything that goes along with anything that's involved in the school. It needs to just promote that. This is the way I read it, rather than it being, you know what I mean? So I don't know, I'm just trying to speak a little bit to what Amelia was saying. It's just always with the eye of promoting healthy habits and the school, like with the thing they sent out this week about, hey, stop sending candy in with your kids' food or whatever, because, you know, I think it's along those same lines.
Right. Any more questions on local wellness? All right, next one is a recommended new policy adoption covering workplace harassment and an associated complaint procedure. We don't currently have a policy on workplace harassment, so this is a new policy recommendation. I read the policy and it seems pretty straightforward to me. I was actually surprised we didn't already have one on this topic. Did anyone else have any concerns? Next one is a recommended update to a currently existing policy covering the use of restraint or seclusion. This applies to use of restraint or seclusion, on students by school staff. There are updates in this policy to the definition of restraint. There's a new prohibition of what's called a seclusion cell, and there's some verbiage to define what that means. Again, this is an update. We've had a policy for quite some time on use of restraint or seclusion, and this policy would, not only governs, what's acceptable as far as restraint or seclusion, but is where what we would as a board be looking at if there were ever to be an incident or an associated complaint, involving restraint or seclusion, or what would guide our administration in dealing with such a thing. I didn't see anything in this recommended update that was concerning or seemed out of the ordinary. Does anyone have any questions about this one? All right, the next one is updates of a policy. Actually, it was the most recent policy we adopted as a school. It was originally introduced about 3.5 years ago, called the All Students Belong policy and associated complaint procedure. This was widely adopted across the state of Oregon, again, between 3 and 4 years ago. The nature of the updates of this policy changed the name from All Students Belong to Every Student Belongs. It changes the formal definition of symbols of hate that are referenced. So the procedure does a few things, one of which is to ban symbols of hate. And there are some updates to the formal definition of or list of things that are considered symbols of hate. I think the Confederate flag was actually added to this policy as one of the items that's considered as a symbol of hate. There's some other sort of, I would consider, not overly concerning wording changes. And then on the associated complaint procedure, so complaint procedures filed under this policy are called bias incidents. And there's some additional steps in the complaint procedure. And there's some actions for us to take as a board in terms of choosing from some options the OSBA gives on recommended wording choices for steps 1 through 4 of the complaint procedure. Some of those involve designating a school administrator, or a person as the person to which complaint should be filed. I'd like to suggest that in cases where that's a choice, that we agree as a board to make that first person the executive administrator. There is a choice in here. We have to designate somebody who should be the recipient of the complaint, or to which a person can file the complaint if the complaint itself is against the executive administrator. In my opinion, that should be the secondary administrator, the assistant administrator. The nature of these complaints is that they're supposed to be initially investigated and processed by administrators and not the board. I guess what I'd like to suggest between now and the second reading is that if the board's okay with it, that I work with Matt to make the sort of logical choices on the lines of what I just mentioned from those available, presented to us by OSBA, and in the second reading make that clear what I've chosen so that we can make a final determination. I didn't see any of the options in here as being overly concerning or requiring a lot of discussion, but I'm open to other opinions.
since we already discussed that earlier, do you want to wait till the end of the presentation and just make a board motion that we direct you to work with Matt on any board action that needs to take place, and then come back to the board for the second
Yeah,
reading?
yeah, I think that's fine. I would just say that if anyone's looked at the available choices, not all these policies have choices that the board needs to make, but some do. And you know, if someone has a strong preference after having read a policy once, you know, now tonight's definitely the time to make sure I'm aware of that. Just so I can factor it in to any discussions I have.
You want to maybe give like a week-long window of, hey, if you see something here that you feel strongly about, please make sure to get it into me, or a few days or something like that, where you say, make sure to email Thad within the next 3 days or so.
Yeah, I just understand I can't, you know, we have to be careful not to engage in offline discussion on that. So let's just.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
It can't be a discussion back and forth, but if you have concerns, email Thad directly and don't create a long running discussion. And Thad, bring those concerns to the next board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Next one is a recommended new policy covering suspected sexual conduct with students and associated reporting requirements. So this is a new policy governing suspicion of staff sexual conduct with students. Not that we've ever had that problem recently in Mosier, but as you know, it doesn't take much reading to know that this has been a problem at different educational settings around the country, and thus OSBA's recommendation that we have a formal policy on how to handle this. It does sort of define what's expected or required as far as reporting. If a staff member knows, you know, or suspects something like this happened or is going on, it does sort of define, you know, the need to do something about it. So I don't see anything, you know, I think we should have a policy on this. I certainly hope that the policy would never need to be triggered. But I think it's a good thing to have. Any comments or questions? Concerns? Next one is closely related, and this governs suspected abuse of a child and associated reporting requirements. Just reviewing my own slide here. So there's sort of multiple. There's a main policy here recommended for us to adopt as a new policy covering suspected abuse of a child, and then two amendments or additions to that policy covering reporting of suspected abuse of a child, and then another about governing investigations around abuse that are conducted on school premises. There is a requirement in here for us to identify, again, name a licensed administrator to which a report of suspected abuse should be made. Per my comment on the other policy, I think to me the obvious choice here is our executive director, unless someone feels differently. Go ahead, Marie.
Is it possible to be able to report to more than one individual?
That's a good question about whether we can put that in our policy. I can certainly ask Spencer Lewis at OSBA about that. Okay. Yeah, and that's a good question. Any other questions? I can make sure I include an answer on that for our second reading.
Yeah, I only suggest that to act as a kind of checks and balances, so that in the event that the perpetrator is that person that people are reporting to, it doesn't get, you know, the complaint procedure can take place.
Understood.
Yeah.
All right, the next one is policy IL, which is also a new policy governing school assessments. Apparently, this is required for all charter schools, OSBA says, because of student test taking impropriety and opt-out notice for summative assessment. I think this one might take us a little bit longer to finalize than we can probably realistically accomplish by December. It looks to me from my initial read that there's quite a bit of leeway and options for us to choose from on language of various things and how we're going to conduct assessments. And I think it probably needs a bit of work at a minimum with Matt, but possibly more. I think it's our opportunity to sort of define in a policy that we need to have what we're doing to assess students. And I think it's important to define that both, you don't want to be too, it's a fine line, between committing to so much that we can never realistically accomplish it, but also, putting something meaningful in here so that the policy has meaning. And I guess I feel like on this policy, probably more so than the rest, I felt a bit intimidated by the choices that seem to be there because not being an administrator myself, I would be afraid to make choices that either don't make any sense as far as assessment, or that unintentionally commit the staff of the school to an inordinate amount of extra work that I wasn't aware we were committing to. So I think this one may be one that, unless someone else feels differently or it doesn't look as intimidating to somebody else on the board, that we might need to pull out and give ourselves an extra month beyond December to make some informed decisions before we adopt.
Oh, I agree with what you're saying, Thad. And I think that some of those things in that list are already being accomplished, but I want to hear what Matt's interpretation of it was. And I think
some of the things might be as simple as just saying what we're already doing. Like we already do multiple iReady assessments and different things throughout the year. So I could be wrong. It could be that we just need to define what we're already doing and capture it in policy, and we're good.
It is intimidating, though. I mean, there's a lot of the public charter foul, and so I think I agree with your assessment of just maybe taking some more time on that one. A lot of the other stuff is when we talk about other complaint procedures, it's pretty straightforward, but this one I do agree we should make sure that we're meeting the needs there and not just rush through it. So I second what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. I'll definitely delve into this one and get with Thad.
Anyone else on policy IL? All right, that brings us to a recommended update to our current policy JB, which covers equal education opportunity. This really just contains some wording that's very similar to some changes in wording in our the discrimination procedure update that define items for which MCS can't limit student enrollment. So this really just the wording changes are along the same lines, in my opinion, as our discrimination policy, and they just kind of ensure that we as a charter school can't discriminate by not enrolling kids that for certain reasons that are kind of classified as inequitable or discriminatory. Any questions on the recommended updates for JB? All right, next policy is an update to our weapons in schools policy. We do have a policy governing weapons in schools. This update includes wording, sort of updating the definition of when and where a student possession of weapons is prohibited. So it includes specific language to not only, sort of be interpreted as at school during the school day, but any school function, etc. I read the updated wording there as broadening rather than narrowing the scope of when weapons are not permitted. There's some new wording specifically about discharge of firearms on school premises. Some new and updated wording about staff reporting requirements. So, if they suspect a weapon in the school and what they're required to do, if they have that suspicion, and then some other wording changes that are somewhat minor and too numerous to mention. There is some optional wording in there giving the ED power to authorize weapons on school property for certain purposes, and some of the examples called out are things like hunter safety classes or firearm safety training. That it's optional, for the board can choose to not give that leeway to the executive director and just stick with a no weapons for any purpose whatsoever, or have that language present. I haven't talked to anyone on the board about their personal opinions on that. And I do think it's something we should make a decision on next month before we adopt. Does anyone want to share any thoughts on that now?
I just, part of what it's talking about is, hunter safety courses or other things that are, I think, would be in line with something that, given where we live. I think there's obviously a sensitivity to weapons in the school setting, but at the same time, if there's some sort of, whether it's a club or group that somehow forms in the future, and we, codify language now that prohibits that from happening, then it may be something that may bring our community together. Whether it's around hunting or something else. So I don't feel strongly about it, but I also don't want to limit what people may want to get involved in the future, while also protecting our school.
Yeah, I mean, we don't currently, I don't think, teach any of these things at Mosier School, but that doesn't necessarily mean we wouldn't in the future. I'm personally okay with, as long as the definition is somewhat narrow, with giving the lead administrator the ability to make decisions on stuff like this. I think we should be careful to keep not allow that definition to be too broad. But I personally took, when I was in 4th grade, part of our standard curriculum was hunter safety course. We all took it. We had to. I grew up in a state that was much more had a lot more hunting. But I don't think it's definitely not. We're not making a decision on that tonight. But I just encourage people to come prepared to make a decision on that next month. Yeah, Marie.
Yeah, if I could just piggyback off of this subject, I agree with what everyone's been saying. And I think, unfortunately, many casualties are caused by firearms in homes, and children have access to, firearms that aren't properly locked up, or ammunition and the firearm aren't separated. And I think there probably would be a benefit to maybe bringing gun safety in some way, especially in this rural community where I think there are many households have firearms. And if we can educate the youth about how dangerous they can be, we might be able to save some young people's lives.
I love the way you said that, Marie, because it's a lot along the lines of education rather than just avoidance or ignoring an issue. And thank you for the way you said that. It was perfect.
Any other questions on recommended updates to our policy on weapons in schools? All right, the next one is a recommended update to a longstanding policy we've had regarding electronic communication systems. So the changes on this policy kind of refine wording, define electronic communications, and there's some specific wording changes here that define the school's responsibility to ensure student safety with respect to what used to be termed as just like electronic communications and now explicitly calls out email, social media, some more sort of currently applicable terms. Given the sort of modern, I think the last time we adopted a electronic communication systems policy, social media probably didn't exist or certainly wasn't as prevalent as it is now. There are some choices for the board to make around options regarding school allowance of student and staff use of school electronic communication systems for personal use. So that could include anything from use of a school computer to even use, having one's personal device like a phone on the school Wi-Fi. I think we need to take a look at that as a board and probably follow our administration's recommendation on it. And, this might be one that we want to pull out and take a little bit more time on. I want to make sure we do something sensible here, but that is also enforceable. I don't know how other people feel about it, but that was the sort of things we have to choose wording on, mostly centered around student and staff personal use of school resources, electronic communications resources, and that could be something as simple as an email to a friend sent from a school computer, right? So I think we should be really thoughtful and careful about what we capture in policy there, so that we don't have unintended consequences.
A good point. I was just going to share that in one school I was at, a staff member continued to use their laptop without authorization, and it ended up infecting the whole system and costing a lot to fix it.
Do you find now, Matt or Jen, a lot of distraction and trouble with electronic devices in school? Are we seeing that with our students or our staff? Is this something that we need to take more action on, or is it something where we feel is being handled pretty well right now?
Definitely one, like Thad said, I think to pull out, Dan. I could not argue there isn't significant issues with these devices with students. I'm not going to really say at this level necessarily, but the high school level, and we are seeing some currently, statistically small, but they do create issues. We've had one just in the last week.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Thad, let's follow the recommendation and take this one and look through it a bit more as well.
Yeah, so I'll go through this with Matt, but I just be prepared that if it feels like we may have to pull this one out and not fully approve it next month if it looks like there's still a bit more interaction with OSBA. I think I'd like to understand what other charter schools our size have done on some of the options here too. And not try to stray too far outside the lines there. All right, that's the last slide. Yeah, I guess it just asks for the board to consider whether between now, there's not really any formal action required, but I guess I would feel more comfortable if the board empowered me to work with Matt between now and next month on any of the, there's a handful of these policies, about half of them that we have some choices to make, to just sort of get his recommendations, and also with Osba and Spencer Lewis, so that I can refine those choices enough that we can make a decision in an efficient manner next month for our second reading. And then what I would advise is that for any policy where, that's we either haven't really refined what we want to do, or there seems to be some disagreement, we can pull those out and delay approval of them until we work out any sort of remaining issues. I think at least 2/3 of these should be probably approved next month. There's 2 or 3 that might take an extra month to finalize.
Will you, after this meeting, Thad, send an email out just highlighting the ones we've noted that we need to take more time on, so the board can make sure to read those over in between now and next month's meeting?
Yeah,
then,
I'll do that to both Matt and the board, and that'll be a good precursor for Matt and I to get together and talk about some.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I'll make the motion that we empower you to meet with Matt and your OSBA affiliate to go over the policies that we've highlighted and come back to the board with whatever findings you have. Can I get a second for that? Thank you, Avelia. All those in favor? Any opposed, please voice your opposition. Thank you. Motion passes. All right. A junior board member there. All right. Pull up our next. Thank you, Thad, for your work on that. I know that was a big ask. There's a lot there. There's a lot of policies there. Thank you for going through all that and getting that ready for us.
It is gripping work. I've been on the seat for weeks. No problem.
Well, thank you. That brings us to committee reports. Item number 13, and first is Marie with facilities.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to pull up my report.
Would you like me to share?
Yeah, Dan, that'd be great.
Okay. Okay. Everyone see that?
Okay, so I think maybe what I'll do is go through the various projects, and at the end I would request an action item to change the format of the facilities committee, as was mentioned earlier in our meeting. So I met yesterday with John and Matt at the school, and there continues to be, work happening every day and new issues presenting themselves. One of the big projects that's taking place is the hole is finally getting filled with aggregate, and it will be compacted and available for parking use, hopefully after the Thanksgiving break. There's different signs. I don't know if you saw the photographs. I took a few yesterday of signs that have been placed around the school campus. Most notably one that lets visitors know that the property is being surveyed by video cameras, and that guests, visitors need to sign in at the office. There are now no dogs on the property signs for health and safety reasons. And more of those signs will continue to be posted. Does anyone have any questions about signage or the whole up to this point?
Marie, on the dog sign, I don't have it in front of me right now. My recollection, it was something like 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. Are you making an exception for during the summer and days when there's no school in session? I ask because I know that that yard is really popular with local dog owners.
I think Matt can answer that question. So Matt, would you mind?
It's a good point. I would assume that the school is basically 9 months, and this is specific to that time. I don't think summer would necessarily be, I don't think we'd need to put it in there. Then you'd have 12 months of the year. And folks are, when I was leaving at 5 o'clock, they're definitely, this will take a little bit of time to people to adjust, but they were coming right down and seemed to be following it. So I think the intent is truly just school hours and calendar wise. We could modify it if you felt we needed to, but I sort of don't think so. If we were a year-long school, which they do exist, then I could see it.
Maybe an option would be to cover them over in the summertime when we're not in session.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll continue. The ADA lift is now fully operable. The doors, as I mentioned earlier, are projected to be installed this month. Of course, I think it had been hoped to install them, sooner. However, there have been supply chain issues, and there is a third door which is still being manufactured. However, 2 of the 3 have been manufactured, so we'll just have to hope for the best. There's really not much. I know Don is, staying on top of that, and the contractors know the need, so it's just going to be a matter of time. And the fencing project currently is in phase 1. The fencing in the main campus will begin at the end of this month, barring supply chain issues. And unfortunately, the board will need to revisit phase 2 of the fencing project, which will need to address the middle school campus. And that is because there is an easement issue with the annex property that is in the process of being addressed. The property owner that lives behind the middle school campus has an easement on the school property, the annex property. And if they are granted that easement moving forward, the gates will need to be in place so that they can go through and leave. However, for various reasons, the city and ODOT feel that that easement is not of benefit or necessary, and chances are that a gate will not be necessary. So then the costing of the fencing project will be affected by that decision. So unfortunately, the fencing of the school property, currently the temporary fencing is being offered for free by the Zockert Fencing Company. It's not ideal. However, the middle school campus will continue to have that temporary fencing until that easement issue is resolved. Does anyone have any questions about that? Or Matt, if I misspoke, please correct me.
Not at all. Let me know, Marie, if we can team up on pursuing an answer to that, because I'm not quite sure where it's at, but between ODOT doing what they recently did, that easement seems to have outlived its function for sure with the facilities we've moved down there. So hopefully it will be resolved for safety issues. Otherwise, just like you said, the gates alone will be quite a lot, if more money, if we have to come up with gates. And the only other thing I was going to mention before I forget is, if the gizmo discussion progresses as a potential office versus Mrs. Hoag's class. The door for that, currently, I think the discussion was around the office being in that classroom. But I believe all of you probably are going to continue to discuss how to pin down where the location of the office should be. But I'm simply saying, I wonder if the door, isn't one of the 3 doors supposed to go on the exterior of that room? I don't know myself.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, and I will get up the new office I have as an item that the board will need to consider moving forward.
Okay.
For now, I'll just add that the security system is up and running. The 15 cameras that are designated for the main building are working, and that there's a 2-camera system and monitor for the middle school in place. So the security system is fully functioning and efficacious. And as was mentioned earlier with the middle school, the ADA ramp project has been halted because of the need to repipe the annex, which will take place during Thanksgiving break. And the Mosier Community School custodian Mitch will do the necessary demo work inside the annex property so that interior plumbing can be accessed and the water heater evaluated for operability and possible contamination. I think Don and Mitch believe that the water heater was never utilized, so chances are good that it will be able to serve the school. However, if it is deemed that it does not work or that it has been contaminated, there's the possibility that that water heater will need to be replaced. Don submitted an application for a $15,000 farm to school grant offered by the ODE. So that is something that hopefully will come through for the school. And does anyone have any questions?
I did, Marie, on the water heater point. I just worry that, I mean, we'll defer to whatever the plumbing contractor says, but I'd rather replace it than risk any further contamination. So if that's got anything in it that we don't want in there, then my vote would be just to get rid of it and get something new rather than risk it, because it may never have been turned on, but was water flowing through it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and Don is of that opinion as well. So if there's been water sitting in there and it's deemed that it's been contaminated, there's absolutely no good reason to use it. Okay.
Thank you. And then so Dawn got the grant submitted for the farm to school that's awesome. That's exciting.
Yeah, she did that. So other things that we discussed yesterday, and I just want to kind of present this evening. I don't know how much of a discussion we want to have because we don't have all the board members here. However, Dawn and other staff have been considering the possibility of a new office location in Gizmo, because once Gizmo is no longer used for the science classroom, it will be an empty building essentially, and it could make a suitable office area. It's ADA accessible, it has 2 bathrooms, and with just some minor interior wall changes, it would be, in Dawn's estimation, less costly to retrofit than the classroom that's in the lower level of the southeast side of the southeast corner of the main building. And I sent a sketch of that that she drew up. And so the idea would be that visitors would need to check in at the Gizmo building. There would still be a gate at the southeast portion of the property for kids to enter in the morning when they get dropped off by the bus, and also when they leave. However, it would be an exit only gate. The main entrance would be on the southwest corner, and people would enter Gizmo, check in there, and the administrative offices would be in Gizmo. So that is a thought on how to house an administrative office. And also Dawn would really like to address the cafeteria, the kitchen, and the space available to the student body. So leaving that, not placing the office in that southeast location that we had previously discussed, would allow for that. So just something to chew on. I know it's a lot to take in, and there have been a lot of moving parts and a lot of changes to the plan. Does anyone have any questions about that new office location idea?
I've always, I like the idea that there's a couple, there's going to be drawbacks, positive and negative to anything. Saving that room in the main building for a classroom, I think is a good idea, because it's one of those things, square footage and classroom space when we need them, are hard to, it's something you just can't generate out of nowhere. And so to reduce a classroom and get rid of it for office space when we have another place that's suitable for that, to me seems like a good idea. They also having that as, so all our kids can get a tighter window of time versus such a much, broader spread out version of time, which is what we do now. Seems like a good idea. It seems like it solves a lot of problems. Maybe one of the only issues would be signage and making sure people know where the office is, so that when they need to check in, they know where to go. And that could just be accomplished with some signs on that southeast corner there that says office that way, and then there's going to be a gate there that's the fencing company is putting in, but we could always put a doorbell that allows people to ring the doorbell to get in. I don't remember if the gate is before the door or after the door for Gizmo, but if it's before the door, then we can just have a doorbell where they ring the doorbell to have someone come meet them there, let them in. Go ahead, Julia.
Sorry. Go ahead, Julia.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I can't see everybody right now. I'm going to close this. I'm going to stop screen sharing so we can see everybody.
Oh, I just had a question about if it was over there with little kids, going to the office when they feel sick or coming late, like they'd have to go outside in inclement weather, and also just walk, have people walking them. Just a consideration. You guys have a much better sense of who comes in and out of the office every day and how much kid traffic there is, but it does seem like, it's pretty disconnected, that building from the main building. And so it might just be kind of resource intensive to have someone walking kids back and forth, or keeping eyes on them.
So a couple of things. One, the entrance would be the south side. So they would say the back side where like storage is right now is where the entrance would be. So, when anyone came to the school, they would be on the other side of the fence. In terms of like students going to the nurse, we could look into the possibility of someone else doing the nursing and keep that in the main building as an option. And that's just something else we can look into. That not necessarily having the office staff be the nurse as well, because that Matt and I have observed that sometimes can be pretty taxing in the office at times. So that could be just another discussion. There's a better way that we could deal with a nurse on campus? But the other side of Gizmo could also be a great place for like a meeting area, things like that, like a boardroom.
That's a good point, Jennifer. And one thing, I unless I missed it, also with the enhancement of the size potentially in Mrs. Hoag's room of an additional cafeteria area, you also have this building in this community is sort of a relocation point. So if you ever had some issue, you have more capacity there for feeding people if there was a crisis or something.
That's a great point. Yeah, our building is designated. I think Tad's going to say the same thing. So go ahead, Tad.
Well, I was going to say that's a great point, but I don't see how we can give up 2 classrooms and still serve all our grades. I mean, if we turn Gizmo into an office and use Miss Hoag's current classroom as a new cafeteria space, we've reduced our number of classrooms by 2.
Yeah,
no,
that is another con.
I don't see how we could do that without adding another portable down to the middle school campus.
I guess so, Thad, one of the thought processes that I had moving forward, if we decided to separate humanities back into ELA and history, then we would need to do another portable down where the middle school is being moved. But also I think the idea of having all the middle school classrooms in one area is something to think about moving forward as a.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it from the current classrooms. Like, we don't have any classrooms sitting around not used right now, do we?
We have 2 down at the middle school that are not quite ready yet, but it's 2 classrooms that aren't open yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also if we use the other side for seating for the cafeteria, we don't permanently lose that as a possible classroom space.
Why not?
Because if we're just putting the
cafeteria space, we can't also use it as a classroom, right?
Well, no, if we're only putting the tables in there and we're not changing anything really in there. I mean, I know Dawn's talked about expanding the cafe, the actual kitchen area. But if we're just using that classroom and being able to put the lunch tables in there to have more seating for students, we don't permanently lose that as a classroom space.
Oh, okay. I guess it wasn't clear to me how we could lose Gizmo and even temporarily lose another classroom and still serve all our kids. That part wasn't clear.
Yeah, I think, well, I understand losing a classroom space. I mean, at this point, the only reason that we would need an additional classroom space down in the middle school area is if we decided to go back to 4 classes for middle school. But within the elementary, I don't know if there's a vision of adding more classes for grades.
Maybe it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely, there are some cons for sure we have to think through. Even in closing the walls in the current idea for the office will be, I think, pretty costly. And if not done, I don't know how an ED would have private conversations in that room. You really have to soundproof it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just so I'm clear, so I understand, right now we have 3 classrooms for middle school, 1 in the annex building and then 2 that are, 1 in Gizmo, 1 in Miss Hoag's class, right? And once the portable is done, that will be 2 more classrooms down there in the middle school campus. Is that correct? So we're net neutral if we move those down, and as long as we're not changing anything in a large construction standpoint, we still have the potential in the future to use those other classrooms if something changes. If this move does happen with the move from the office down to the Gizmo, what are we doing with that office space?
You mean
the current office space?
Oh,
I mean, Matt and I talked about a lot of things. I kind of had the thought of that possibly being an area that could be sort of an in-school suspension room, which could be really valuable for the school. I mean, we could use the office space. I mean, right now we're using a huge art room for two specials teachers that don't need that much space. So that could be also used for ELD or for our Title I reading specialist.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions or concerns about the proposed move? And our timeline on that is after Thanksgiving break, which will be probably a line up with our next meeting. We'll have a better idea of where we're at on that project. Is there more work that needs to be done go ahead, Avelia.
Sorry, going back into the office discussion. So what Jen lastly said, just to make sure I'm understanding this, if the specialty teachers that are currently using the art room were a possibility to move into the current office space, that would empty an additional classroom, correct? So at the end, we would be getting additional, there would be an empty classroom available to create into something else, or for the need of an additional classroom for elementary or for middle school grade, correct?
Yeah, there's a bunch of shifting that I see could possibly happen. So Avelia, within that, even if we moved one of the special teachers in Gizmo, you could also use the backside of Gizmo if you wanted for one of the special teachers. And then you do open up that whole art room as an option. You know, I guess my vision would be the assistant principal always stays in the main building, and then the ED could move out by the office area, but you could also put a wall up out there and have the ELD teacher out in that area. Because the ELD teacher only pulls out, she doesn't do any push in.
Or to affirm what Jennifer was just saying in Dan's question, I could totally see the ELD folks moving into the current office, and then you'd have that whole room back there as an additional option if needed.
Okay, so it sounds like just there's options here, you know, to think about for the future and as we move forward. And then on the actual portable, besides the ramp is going in, is there any other work that needs to happen inside for those to be ready for classes?
I don't know, Dan.
Okay.
Myself. We can find out though.
Sorry, the inside needs to be it needs to be painted. It's not quite done yet. And I spoke to Mitch about it. He was kind of waiting for the ramp so we could, instead of having to climb into the building to do that. Because of my understanding is even after the ramp is done, we have to get a occupancy permit and we have to have an inspection done. So once that ramp's done, Mitch can get that done while we're waiting on that part of it.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on for facilities for Marie, or any other input, Marie, that you want to add to your presentation?
No, I think I'd just like to ask that we make a motion to dissolve the facilities committee as it currently is right now, which is led by a board member, and empower the facilities committee to be led by our ED until June of 2024. And the reason being that there's a scope of work that's large and been determined, and I think that at this point they just need to be addressed, and in June we could revisit as a board how we want the facilities committee to be led.
Okay, before we make that motion, is there anyone that has any other input or comments based on what Maurice just said? Okay, I think it makes sense. Personally, as you said, it's already been led. The board has already made decisions based on a lot of the things that are upcoming. The only thing with that would be there may be decisions related to the grant that the board needs to weigh in on, but I'm directly involved in that, so I don't feel like those are things that would happen without board knowledge. Anyone else have that? I saw you unmuted. Any comments or questions or concerns about this? Okay.
I support making the facilities committee and ED committee. Yeah.
Okay. Unless there's other concerns or questions, I'll read your action item just as you wrote it, Marie. I'll make a motion to dissolve the board-led facilities committee and empower the interim ED to lead the facilities committee until June 2024, at which point the MCS board of directors would revisit the direction of the facilities committee. Can I get a second? Thank you, Thad. All those in favor? Any opposed? Please voice your opposition. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, that brings us to fundraising, which is McKenna, and I don't have anything else for the Tigers Den or turkey trot. I don't believe we got any other emails along with that. We do have a turkey trot coming up on Thanksgiving. There's some fundraising going on in the community. There'll be pies and other gift certificates and things for a raffle at the turkey trot. It's fun. It starts on the west side of the Twin Tunnels Trail and goes out set distance and comes back. And there's different. There's a children's distance. There's and then two other distances. I believe it's maybe a 5K and a 10K. And then it was well attended the last time we did it. And then we have the holiday fair coming up. Jen or Matt, do you want to speak more about the holiday fair?
Jen has been leading on that based on some of her connections, because it is appearing like it's going to be nip and tuck to get the coverage. Would you say, Jen?
Well, we've had a few parents step up and they're helping try to find volunteers. Sign Up Genius just went out. And I guess this was the first year, Dan, that I kind of learned our part in the Christmas fair, that we find the volunteers and various other parts. So I've been working with Sam Bach, who organizes the fair, and trying to help her move forward with the things that we need to get done. So right now it looks like we're moving forward, and I sent out 2 messages before the Sign Up Genius for volunteers, and she said there's been several people who have contacted her. So I haven't heard any negatives. She's coming in Friday, and she and I are going to do a walk through the building to just go over expectations and what needs to be done.
Jen, I was just going to say that historically the board has often volunteered for some of those slots to man the door. And so you can reach out to us if you've got empty spots and need more bodies. I know that I will be there with one of my daughters selling some crafts on Saturday, so I'd be happy to help myself. And I'll also put in a plug for the turkey trot. Thanksgiving morning, it's a really great community event. If you are, you don't have to be like a runner. People walk it with their families. It's on the Twin Tunnels. It's beautiful. People get dressed up. It's fun. There's little ribbons for the kids. Kind of has a race spirit without the competitiveness. And even if you're not in town for Thanksgiving, just recruit some folks. If you know folks who are going to be around, it is a nice. It's a really fun event.
Right.
Burn off those calories before you put more calories in your body.
Mhm.
The way to pay your debts early before you spend.
Yes.
Carbohydrate deficit.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, if no one has anything else to add tonight, we've reached the end of our agenda. 7:49. Good job, everyone. Thank you, Fad, for the policy presentation. Awesome job. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. And have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you